too late tonight. So again, good evening and welcome. My name is Angela G. I'm the new district ranger here on the Geoa and Squiddy Ranger Districts. I was here in 2013 for a little while on detail, but this is my first week back this time around. So I'm really glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to working with you all. And also, this is kind of my first exposure to where we're at in the plan revision as well. So I'm excited for this meeting tonight. Let me thank you all for taking time out of your schedule to come and join us this evening. I know everybody's busy, but we really appreciate you coming out. We look forward to talking with you, getting your feedback. We want to hear from you and hear what your thoughts are. So thank you again for coming out. I won't keep you up here too long because what I really want to do is introduce our new Deputy Forest Supervisor. And it's his first week as well. We started the same day on Monday. So with that, it's my pleasure to turn it over to James Golonis.
Thanks, Angie. Well, thanks. It's great to be here. I just started this week, as Angie was saying, and my first day I had to go down to Atlanta for a meeting down there and got to drive back today. So glad to be back up in North Carolina with all of you today. The one thing I was going to say, I think it's great that folks are here. I think it shows that your passion for the land that you're here and the resources that come from these national forests that we all treasure, water, wildlife, recreation that we all love about these public lands. So I think it's great that folks are here. I wanted to mention a few things and then hand it over to our specialists who have been working on this. I'm looking forward to learn as well because I just started this week. What we won't be talking about is oil and gas development. From the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, they don't see that there's much potential for oil and gas on the forests here. So we decided that in the event in the future, if there is some interest or some areas that are found, that we will do the analysis and evaluation at that point and be going through a public process at that point, but it won't be included in the forest plan revision process that we're working on now. So tonight what we'll be doing is kind of sharing back with you what we heard from you all and how the team worked to put that together into these draft proposals that you see here and some of the maps that you all were looking at earlier. And then also talking about what were some of those significant issues that were identified and what are the next steps in the process and how you all can participate in that. So I'm going to hand it over to Heather Lupczak, who is the acting forest planner, and she's going to do that overview of the plan components, those management areas that are proposed, and the next steps in the process. And then we'll have kind of an open session. You have these posters and our specialists here that can answer questions and get into more detail with you all this evening. So, Heather, thanks.
Thanks, James. Can everyone hear me okay?
No.
I'm used to... Okay, so I'll use my microphone. Okay, so welcome, everyone. Now you can hear me well. Okay. So we're here tonight to talk about the plan revision for the Nantahala-Pisgah National Forest. And again, welcome everyone, and thanks again for taking time out of your day. I am the acting forest planner for the Nantahala-Pisgah National Forest, and working with the team. We've got a lot of our team resource specialists here today to help answer questions after we go through this presentation. And if everybody, make sure that you picked up a handout when you came in. I'll be referring to that, or a lot of the information that I'm going over is in that handout, and if you have any questions afterwards, you can ask us. So why are we here this evening? Of course, we're revising the land management plan. The last revision was back in 1995, and we're overdue for updating the management plan. And tonight, really, we want to share some information and reasoning for what we're proposing at this point. Everything is really draft at this stage, but we want to hear your reactions to some of the information that we've pulled together and get some comments on the desired conditions and the draft management areas. Again, Again, the forest plan, just to give a broad overview, the forest plan is the guiding document for the forest. It provides broad strategic direction for management over the next 10 to 15 years. What it does not do, it does not at this stage make any decisions for on-the-ground activities, but really sets the stage for future actions and future project planning. This evening, I'm going to go over the timeline of where we're at now and where we're headed over the next couple of years. I'll also give a review of what we've covered since we began the plan revision about 2 years ago. I'll talk about significant issues that we identified through collaboration and cooperation with the public, and also talk about the draft management areas that we'll be sharing information on this evening. I'll go over some of the forest plan components and also give an update on the wilderness inventory and evaluation process. So the forest plan revision process is really broken into three main kind of parts. The first of which is the assessment, which we completed in 2013, or really completed earlier this year. The assessment provides a description of the existing conditions on the forest. It gives the context for what's working with the existing forest management plan, and also identifies, is kind of the first step for identifying where there's some need for change in the revised plan. So as I said, we completed the assessment earlier this year, and now we're in the plan development phase for the plan revision. Once the plan is completed and we have a signed decision and we begin implementation, then we go through an iterative process of monitoring the actions of the forest plan. And so here's a little bit more on the timeline process. This timeline is on our forest website, so you can read these teeny tiny words in a little bit more detail. But again, in September of 2012 is when we kicked off the plan revision. We started here almost 2 years ago in the Chiowa District with our first public meeting that was focused on the assessment. The draft assessment was shared with the public at the end of 2012 or 2013, and we completed the assessment report early 2014. Right now, as I said, we're at this stage right here where we're developing the forest plan components, and we hope to have a forest plan proposal in early of 2015. At which point we will start working on an analysis of the forest plan, which is in the draft environmental impact statement. We hope to have that draft EIS to share with the public next June, in June of 2015. At that point, there will be an additional opportunity for the public to comment on what we're proposing, and then with the ultimate goal of having a decision by August of 2016. So in 2013, as I said, we had 16 public meetings. The information that we collected at those meetings really was to gather information for the assessment report, as well as to really start talking about where there needs to be change in the revised forest plan. In 2014, we had 2 public meetings earlier this year in April and July, and received thousands of public comments at that time. The information that we gathered over all of those meetings is what went into identifying the significant issues and the management areas and our draft desired condition statements that we'll be talking about this evening. So as far as significant issues, these are the issues and the concerns that we heard from the public. We identified 4 primary issues that kind of encompass a lot of what we heard. This isn't to say that these are the only concerns or issues that we heard from the public, but these are kind of the main issues that we identified. These will likely be guiding the development of different alternatives. So we will have the proposed plan, and then we'll have different alternative approaches based on that will basically be responsive to these issues. So we've got wildlife habitats, the desire for more young forests, old forests, and varying degrees of interior core forests. Special designations, these include like wilderness areas or special interest areas, as well as experimental forests, research natural areas. So there was a range of opinions regarding regarding the number and kinds of special designations, including wilderness, as I said. And then access, again, is another big issue that we've heard a lot about in this process, the extent of the road and trail systems to provide access to parts of the forest. And recreation. Recreation is a huge component of how managing the Nanahail and Pisgah National Forest, and there's a diversity of recreation interests out there with varying levels of development. So as we work through this, we're really trying to keep these significant issues in mind in terms of how we've drafted some of the desired conditions and moving forward how we'll be responsive with different alternative approaches. So first thing I'm going to talk about in detail is the management areas. So management areas really allow for consistent direction across geographically and ecologically similar areas. Our current forest plan has 21 management areas, and our proposed plan has 16 unique management areas. So we've done some consolidation and some different management area approaches that we're talking about. Again, some of the management areas that are in our existing forest plan will not change very much. We've got backcountry areas, which are identified on these maps as Management Area 3. Those were primarily the Management Area 5 from our existing plan. Special interest areas are Management Area 5, were previously called Management Area 3. Wilderness areas, those will not be changing in this revised plan. Experimental forests, Roan Mountain, and the Cradle of Forestry also, we're not proposing any changes to those management areas. Some of the new management areas that we'll be talking about include forest habitat and diversity, this is Management Area 1. Restoration and connectivity, is Management Area 2. And the significant recreation and heritage corridors, which is Management Area 4. These include the Appalachian Trail, scenic byways, and designated wild and scenic rivers, and cultural byways. So how did we arrive at these management areas? These diagrams here kind of provide the demonstration for how some of the management areas that we're proposing attempt to be responsive to the issues. So here at the bottom are the significant issues that I addressed on the earlier slide, wildlife habitat and access to the forest. So Management Area 1 really provides for more road opportunities, providing that access, and also more active management in terms of creation of early successional habitat. Management Area 2 and Management Area 4 also responsive to these issues. In response to the interest in having some more unfragmented core interior forest habitat, we have Management Area 3, which are the backcountry areas. Management Area 2, again, is the interior core forest. Management Area 7 and 6 are the wilderness and wilderness study areas. And Management Area 5 is the special interest areas. In response to the interest for more special designated areas, again, so there's a lot of overlap, as you can see, but Management Area 5 is our special interest area, and we are considering some additional special interest areas in this revised plan. Management Area 6, which is the wilderness study areas, and that management area will also include any new recommendations for wilderness. And this Management Area 4, we've identified some additional scenic corridors that we'll be looking at. In response to the diverse recreation opportunities, of course, we have the diversity of different management areas that are responsive to different recreation opportunities depending on what kind of experience you're looking for, whether it's a backcountry experience of solitude or something that provides more access to the forest with hunting opportunities. So we've got a diversity of management areas that are responsive to that. So Management Area 1, as I said, this was forest habitat diversity. This management area will provide for a diversity of forest age classes and conditions. High quality wildlife habitat will be provided here, including both early successional habitat as well as some old growth conditions in different areas. Forest management, including timber production and prescribed fire, play an important role in managing the maintenance or maintaining the forest here in Management Area 1. And this management area will likely have more roaded access compared to some of the other management areas. Management Area 2 is the restoration and connectivity. This management area provides opportunities for restoring a diversity of forest age classes and conditions. There's less emphasis on early successional or on young forest habitat creation and more emphasis on connectivity of habitats across the area. New road construction in this management area will likely be limited to low. And right now we're considering a distinction between a management area 2A and a 2B, with the 2A being suitable for timber production and 2B not suitable for timber production. So we can talk a little bit more about what those specifically mean later, but really timber, that's not to say that timber harvest wouldn't be allowed in either one of those management areas. It's just the goal of producing timber for the sake of timber products will be more of a focus in 2A compared to 2B. Management Area 3 includes the remote and primarily unroaded areas of the forest. These areas are primarily shaped by natural processes, and their older forest conditions are more apparent here. This will provide large tracts of backcountry recreation opportunities, and this management area will include many of the inventory roadless areas that came out of the 2001 roadless rule. Management Area 4 includes the significant recreation and heritage corridors. We've got 4 subcategories here, 4A being the Appalachian Trail Corridor, 4B, the scenic byways, 4C is the cultural heritage corridors, and 4D is designated wild and scenic rivers. So these management areas all provide for the conservation and enjoyment of the significant historic and natural and cultural qualities of land that these corridors pass through. Management Area 5 includes research natural areas and special interest areas. These are managed to perpetuate the rare species or conditions or features for which the area was originally designated. Research natural areas are managed as reference conditions for scientific research. There's relatively little to no active management that occurs in research natural areas. They're kind of, as it says, reference conditions to be able to look at what's going on in the forest with lack of management. And in addition, we're also considering 15 special interest areas are being considered, so that those areas are in addition to what we have already identified in our existing forest plan. We have about 40 special interest areas, and so we're looking at 15 additional areas for consideration, which is about an additional 6,000 acres. Some of the proposed additions to special interest areas are listed here. We've got them all across the forest. We don't actually have any proposed additions here on the Chiola Ranger District, but on all the other districts. We do have some existing special interest areas on the Chiola District, and we've got a poster in the room here tonight too that you can take a little bit closer look at some of this information. Management Area 6 includes wilderness study areas and any areas recommended for wilderness designation. These are managed to protect wilderness characteristics pending legislation as to their classification. We currently have 5 designated wilderness study areas: Overflow Creek, Snowbird, Harper's Creek, Lost Cove, and Craggy Mountain. And I'm going to get into a little bit more detail on these recommended for wilderness areas about that process, but we do not have any of those recommendations yet, just because we're not that far in the process yet, and so I'll share a little bit more information on how we're going to get there in a few minutes. But as I said, when we have a proposed plan, any of the new recommendations will be in this management area. Management Area 7 includes the congressionally designated wilderness areas. We've got Linville Gorge, Shining Rock, Middle Prong, Joyce Comer Slick Rock right here on the Chioa, Southern Nantahala, and Ellicott Rock Wilderness. And then just to reiterate, we will not have any additional designated wilderness at the end of this revised plan. What we will have will likely be areas recommended for wilderness, but the forest plan process does not include the process of designating wilderness. Only Congress can designate wilderness. Management Area 8 includes the experimental forests. We have 3 experimental forests on the Nantahala and Pisgah. The Bent Creek Experimental Forest, which is on the Pisgah Ranger District down south of Asheville, the Coweta Hydrological Laboratory, and Blue Valley Experimental Forests on the Nantahala Ranger District. And these lands are dedicated to experimentation, education, and demonstration purposes. And on these areas, research takes precedence over many of the other multiple resource objectives. Management Area 9 includes Round Mountain. This is on the Appalachian Ranger District. This area is managed to perpetuate existing significant plant and animal species and to protect the area's scenic aesthetic attributes. There's a lot of significant rare communities up on the Roan Mountain as well. Management Area 10 includes concentrated recreation areas, including developed recreation sites as well as just areas of concentrated recreation use. Management Area 11 is the Cradle of Forestry on the Pisgah Ranger District. This is the birthplace of American forestry, and this area was designated to provide demonstration purposes to provide demonstration of historic, silvicultural, and management practices. And one of the things that we have heard in our public meetings with over the last couple of years is that there is an interest in providing for some more demonstration of the historic timber practices and management practices at the Cradle of Forestry. And lastly, Management Area 12 includes the administrative sites on the forest, including the district offices, the work centers, the Job Corps centers, and seed orchards. So the management areas, as I said, they really provide the context and the strategy for managing different lands across the forest. We have the management area maps here available to look at on these tables. We've got 2 maps for the Chioa district and all the other district maps here as well, so you can take a look at those, and I encourage you to write notes on. We have sticky notes provided, and if you have a specific recommendation on or comment that you want to include on those. I will reiterate again, what we don't have on these maps are any recommended areas for wilderness, because we haven't gotten to that point in the process yet. So there are some areas that are displayed on these maps that will, if that area should be recommended for wilderness, then it will change from what you see on the maps. So if that's not entirely clear, we can talk through that a little bit as we look over the maps. So now I'm going to shift gear and talk about plan components. Plan components guide future decision-making at the project level. They may apply to the entire plan area, or they may apply to specific management areas. We're going to talk about 3 main plan components. We've got desired conditions. These really provide the vision for where we're headed and what we want the forest to look like in the future. Objectives provide the strategy for how to get there. And standards and guidelines is the language that really put the sideboards on our management and provide the design criteria for accomplishing stuff on the ground. So desired conditions, these are the social, economic, and ecological vision for the forest. There are aspirations and not commitments or final decisions that approve projects and activities. They do not direct actions on the ground. They may only be achievable over the long term, whether it's within the life of the plan or perhaps even at a longer term schedule. It's really kind of a broad, long-term vision for the forest. And an example desired condition statement might read, existing targeted non-native invasive species are eradicated, controlled, or contained, and the establishment of new infestations is promptly detected and prevented. So that's just an example for how a desired condition statement might read. And that's one of the statements that we've got in your handout tonight. An objective is a concise projection of measurable time-specific intended outcomes. Here the key word is measurable and also time-specific. These really are what we'll be looking at when we're monitoring the effectiveness of the plan, is whether or not we're meeting our objectives. They're a way of measuring progress towards achieving or maintaining desired conditions. And an example objective statement might read, to treat at least 50% of non-native invasive plant species populations within 1 to 2 years of detection during the planning period. And so this is an example from the Prescott National Forest. We've not really drafted a lot of we haven't really gotten into the objectives and the standards and guidelines yet, so we're kind of stealing from some of the other forests for some of these examples. Standard is a mandatory constraint on project activity, decision-making, which are established to help achieve or maintain the desired condition. So the specific language here is really this mandatory constraint. These are things that we must follow when we're doing project implementation. And an example statement for our standard may read, projects shall be designed to reduce potential for introduction of new species or spread of existing invasive or undesirable aquatic or terrestrial non-native populations. So this is something that when you're doing project activity, we must be following. Guidelines. These provide information and guidance for project and activity decision making. They do not force action, but set out design criteria that should apply when an action is being taken on the ground. And an example statement for a guideline may read, project and activities should not transfer water between drainages or between unconnected water bodies within the same drainage to avoid spreading disease and aquatic invasive species. So the difference here between the guideline and the standard is that if this was a standard, it would read shall not transfer, and this is a little bit looser with the use of the word should. Another distinction to make between standards and guidelines is that if any deviation at the project level, any deviation from a standard would require a plan amendment. However, deviation from a guideline would just require the documentation as to how that deviation from the guideline, how we're still meeting the objective and the desired condition. And then suitability of areas, we're required to identify in the forest plan process all lands that are unsuitable and suitable for timber production. Areas can also be identified as generally suitable for a variety of other uses. They may be identified as generally suitable for uses that are compatible with the desired conditions and objectives for that area. And again, identifying the suitability of a land base is not a commitment or a final decision-making that approves projects and activities. And some examples, as I said, for identifying suitability would be timber production or harvest, motor vehicle use, road and trail construction. Those are all examples that we may talk about suitability in the context of. Some of the other plan content that we're sharing this evening, I would like to get some feedback from you all on. Include priority watersheds. We're required by the planning rule that we're writing this plan under to identify priority watersheds. These are watersheds that have maintenance and restoration needs that we foresee in the life of the plan. So we have provided a list of 3 or 4 to 5 or so priority watersheds for each ranger district on the forest. These are just This is just kind of an initial list at this point, and we are looking for public feedback on this. We've also got some other management approaches, including the recreation settings information. These recreation settings convey a sense of priority and focus among the plan objectives, and we've got some information to share about recreation settings across the forest and how they may differ in different areas. So now I'm going to go ahead and shift gears and give a little bit of an update on where we're at with our potential wilderness inventory and evaluation process. So we've got a timeline across the top here. This is really just a diagram of how the process goes. We start with inventory, then we move into the evaluation of the inventory areas, the analysis, and then at the outcome we end up with a plan decision that includes recommendations. So right now we are here in the process. In April of this year, we had a public meeting in Asheville that talked about the wilderness inventory process, the process that we used for arriving at the inventory areas. The inventory for additional wilderness areas is intended to be a very broad and inclusive process. And so those maps include a lot of acreage that we'll be considering in more detail during the evaluation step of the process. After we shared those maps in April of this year, we had an opportunity for the public to comment on those, and we received a lot of comments on those inventory maps, and we're still working to update that inventory based on those comments. We're nearly complete with that process and hope to have those maps online and available next week. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about where you can find them and what we'll be asking on those. So again, that's what I just said, that we hope to have the maps online by mid-November. So when we started this round of public meetings, it was 3 weeks ago, so it was about a month away, and now we're here on the Chioa, and it's actually next week. So we hope to have those maps up. This is our forest planning page website. You can go there, and from that website there will be a link to this new collaborative mapping tool that we'll be using. We'll be using this online collaborative mapping tool as a way to get additional input during the evaluation process, and we're not requiring that folks go online and comment this way, but this is just one new tool that we're hoping will be helpful for some people to look at the maps at their own leisure and make comments. We'll also intend to have the copies of these inventory maps available at the district offices if you prefer to look at hard copies and make your comments that way. So, as I said, we're completing the inventory maps and we're entering into the evaluation phase. So each of the areas displayed on the inventory maps, and we do have those inventory maps, the April version of the inventory maps. We have those available this evening so you can take a look at those. But we'll be looking at each of the areas on those maps and asking some evaluation questions. And very broadly, the questions are as follows. We're asking if the area is affected primarily by the forces of nature. So we have some additional questions in the handout that you have that kind of gets into more detail about what we mean by each of these questions. We're also asking, are there opportunities for solitude or primitive and unconfined recreation in the area? And is it practicable to both allow use as well as maintain the area in an unimpaired condition? And does the area have any unique ecological, geological, or other features that make it exceptional for one reason or another? And could we preserve the wilderness characteristics of this area into the future? Again, as I said, it's not a requirement that you make your comments on these inventories through this online tool, but I'm going to go ahead and give you an overview of that tool now. So if you do wish to use that online tool, you'll have an idea of what you'll be looking at when you go there. So if you go to our Forest Service, our plan revision website, will have a link. It'll probably be a link to something called the wilderness evaluation, so it should be pretty clear, hopefully. And it'll take you to this screen. So this is this up here, this mouthful, the Talking Points Collaborative Mapping website. That's the long name for this tool that the Forest Service has developed. It's a nationally used tool, so some of the other forests that are in this process are already using this tool. We've also started using it for other projects as well as forest plan revision and wilderness inventory evaluation. But we're really focusing on using it for the wilderness evaluation at this point in the process. So all this text that you see on this first page is really just rules of commenting and kind of a lot of just standard language about the website. And where you really want to go to see anything actually on the Nantahala of Pisgah is this little tiny box at the bottom. It says, check this box to continue with the next step. Basically means you've read all this and you really want to see the maps. So you click there and you'll be brought to a page that looks like a map, kind of. There's some things that are a little cumbersome about this web page. This legend here is pretty large. You can't really move it around, but the legend, of course, lists what the different things are represented on the map. If you can make out the screen here is the National Forest, and there are some other darker green blobs, which are the inventory areas, and those are the areas that we are looking for comments on. The blue shapes on the map are actually where people have gone ahead and made comments. So this webpage is not actually active yet, so we just put some polygons on here so you would see what it starts to look like as people make comments. But if you're interested in making a comment, you can zoom in. There's a zooming bar over here. You can zoom in or zoom out. Obviously, at this scale, it's really difficult to identify where you are on the ground. So you can zoom in and you get more detail on the maps as you do so. You can also turn different layers on and off over here on the side, or you can look at the map in different ways with aerial imagery, satellite imagery, or topographic features up here. So what you really want to do is make a comment on an area. So you click on one of these buttons up here at the top. You can draw a polygon, a line, or a point. If you want to draw a polygon, of course you just draw a shape, lasso a whole area to make a comment, or you can just stick a point on the map. And when you do that, you'll get this window will pop up. It asks you to enter your name and some contact information if you'd like to, and also how you'd like to be contacted. And then in this box here, you can provide a comment on that area. Again, as at this point, we're really looking for comments on the evaluation. So we'll have some additional information here again, reminding folks what kind of information we're looking for on those areas. And then when you're done typing your comment in, you just click here where it says submit, and the comment will become part of the website. Anybody that visits the website will be able to see your comment, including the Forest Service. So it really provides for an interactive kind of commenting process.
Let me ask, will they also be able to see our email address and address on there? Or just
No, just the comments. And I'll show you that in just a moment. So if we go back here to the map, again, this is the map of the forest. This is a picture where there are no comments on it yet, but if you do want to see what everyone else is saying and commenting on, you can either click on one of those blue shapes where there was a comment, or you can go to the top of the screen and it says to view all comments, click here. And so if you do that and you want to see what everybody else is saying about the forest, you get a screen that looks like this. Now this is a screenshot from another forest that's already using this tool, but these are all comments on inventory areas on that forest. So it just gives it a comment number, the date that it was submitted, and then the text of the comment. And so there's no other information attached to it. It doesn't even look like your name will be there. And then if you're looking at the comments here, you can also go ahead and click on this side here, and then I'll bring you back to the map and show you exactly where that comment was referring to. So after we collect all the information on the evaluation phase, we'll be, of course, collecting comments from the public, as well as doing a lot of data collection internally, as well as to what's going on in these different areas. Once we do that, we'll move into, or we'll have a recommendations for wilderness, or for additions to wilderness. And so those recommendations will be included in the proposed plan. As we begin the analysis of the proposed plan, or really prior to that, we'll have alternatives to the proposed plan, and so there will likely be different recommendations in the different alternatives. And when we do the analysis, the draft environmental impact statement will be looking at the pros and cons and weighing the different impacts for recommending different areas. And then again, at the end of the plan revision process, when we have a decision, the decision will ultimately result in recommendations for wilderness. And again, the final recommendation does not equal congressional designation. Only Congress can designate wilderness. So whatever results in the final forest plan will be shared with the Chief of the Forest Service and then transmitted to the Secretary of Agriculture, who may wish, or who may at any time move it forward to Congress for a congressional designation. So that's all of that on the, again, we do have the wilderness inventory maps available tonight. Those are the initial maps that we shared at the April meeting, and again, they have been updated, but we do not have them entirely complete at this point. So when we do have those complete, everyone who is on our mailing list, including everyone who's signed into our meeting this evening, will receive an update that those maps are available online, and we'll have them available at the district offices as well. So as far as next steps, the public comments that we're getting from these public meetings, as well as any comments that we receive in the mail, will be used to further develop plan components, including the objectives, standards, and guidelines. Again, much of what we're sharing tonight is really just focuses on the draft desired conditions, and these are just forest-wide desired conditions, so we still have a lot of plan components to work through. We still have to work through writing the objectives, the standards, and guidelines. Some issues or resource areas are more appropriately addressed at the objectives and standards and guidelines phase, but the handout that you have includes the draft desired conditions. We'll also be using the input that we received from these public meetings and from the comments to help develop alternatives to the proposed plan. And then over the winter, we'll be starting to work on the analysis of the proposed plan and alternatives, which will ultimately have it available in the draft environmental impact statement next summer. In June 2015 is when we hope to have that to share with the public. And when we have that available, we'll have an additional opportunity for comment. That will be a formal comment period. And we'll also likely have some additional public meetings at that time to discuss in more detail what's included in the proposed plan and alternatives. This evening, again, I'll just reiterate what we're here to share tonight. We've got the management area maps. Everything is draft. We do have some posters that include desired conditions. These don't represent all the resource areas, just kind of some of the different resource areas, and there you do have a more comprehensive list of the desired conditions in your handout, but again, that is not necessarily entirely comprehensive. We're still working through some of this stuff. And again, we also have the recreation settings information and proposed priority watershed information to get your feedback on. And that's all I have for this evening. Does anybody have any questions about what were presented.
Heather, what is the time frame for wilderness evaluation and the comment period going to be?
Sure, so the time frame for the evaluation of the proposed wilderness areas, we're looking, as I said, to get those maps up in next week and we're looking to wrap up the comments on that in a month's time, and so just 30 days. So, because we will need to have that evaluation process really kind of tied up before we have our proposed forest plan, because those recommendations will be part of the proposal, which we hope to have in January.
Okay.
So it's going to be a short turnaround on that, unfortunately.
And what will be in January?
We're hoping to have a draft plan or proposed plan developed so that we can start the analysis process.
Okay. And will the inventory that y'all will have next week be open to comments?
I'm sorry, what?
Will the potential wilderness inventory update that y'all have next week be open to comments?
So we won't be asking for comments on the inventory per se, but those maps that we display will be the finalized inventory, and we'll be moving and looking at just evaluation of those areas. So we'll really be making an effort to move to the next phase of the evaluation.
At what point within this process does something move to the formal designation of a wilderness study area?
That's a good question. So we don't have we no longer have the process for designating as a wilderness study area, and so that management area 6 will include those formally designated wilderness study areas and any recommendations, and they'll be more or less managed in the same way. So it's kind of a change in process and change in terminology. The recommended areas will be basically consistent with what we've previously called wilderness study areas.
Do you have any idea at this point how many possible acreages there would be considered for wilderness?
We really don't have any idea at this point. We won't have a better clarity of that until we get through the evaluation.
There is a map over here that shows the proposed wilderness areas.
So just to be clear, those are not proposed wilderness areas at this time. Those are just maps of the broad inventory, and those are all of the lands that we're considering for potentially being having wilderness characteristics. So that's kind of like the very top of the funnel, and then once we go through the evaluation, only a subset of those areas in the inventory will be recommended. And then, of course, we'll have alternatives in the draft environmental impact statement that look at different ranges of that. So one alternative may consider more acres of wilderness designation, while as, where another alternative may be less than that.
So let me make sure I understand. Y'all would have the wilderness evaluation completed by January when you have proposal?
That's the hope, yes, is to have the wilderness evaluation completed in January.
Okay.
That's what we're striving for.
Is there an opportunity to, with concerns that fracking may occur in the national forest, and, a way that we can set some limits on that?
Sure, so James covered that a little bit at the beginning of our meeting, but no, that's fine. But so we will, are accepting all comments, whether, it's about oil and gas or wilderness. However, in this plan revision process, we're not making any decisions about oil and gas. And so there's really not any potential for development, and so we're not making those decisions at this point, and any activities would be really addressed at a later time. But we can talk to you a little bit more about the oil and gas if you want. Laura can talk to you about that.
Kind of looking for what the USFS is defining wilderness and what you do and cannot do with it. Do you have some place on the website that you can read on that? Just See what the definition is?
Sure, we can probably provide a link. So it all comes out of the Wilderness Act. That's our guiding, our what we're obligated to, how we're obligated to manage wilderness, and it also provides the context for how we are evaluating areas that would meet wilderness characteristics. It's all defined by the Wilderness Act, and yeah, you can either Google Wilderness Act and read some more on that, or we can provide a link on our website.
Wilderness.net is a good resource.
Wilderness.net. All right, so I encourage you all to talk with the resource specialists that are here this evening. There's a comment sheet at the back of your handout. You can either write your comments and leave them with us this evening, or feel free to submit them in, mail them in afterwards. We also have our email address on there you can send comments to. And thank you again for coming.